Okay, so I'm making this video basically to explain the making of the Campaign 6 intro. If you haven't seen it yet, it'll be in the description and on the subreddit. But this is probably my favorite intro that I've made, and I think it's also my best. And I asked on Twitter if people would like to see a video like this, and it got pretty positive reception. So I'm gonna give it a go, and basically the aim is to not only explain this mess of a timeline right here, but I'm also going to try and give some advice to current and maybe future intro makers that want to get into it, because it is quite a fun process if you enjoy it. If you enjoy editing, that is, which I know not everyone does. I use Premiere Pro, but most of what I say should be applicable to Vegas and other editing softwares. Okay, the best way I can think to tackle this is to go layer by layer, so I've disabled all the other layers and we're going to look at the backgrounds first. To start off, we have a long fade in here, and the audio, I always have a fade in and a fade out on the audio as well. But simply the start of this is just footage from, I think, the intro of the first game, because I really didn't know what to put at the start. So I just added a blur to that footage. Pretty simple stuff. And then when it builds up here, this is when the logo would come in. And here we have, most of the backgrounds are taken from, most of the assets even in this intro I took from a website that had all the game files. So this is the, I don't want to spoil anything, but this is basically a control room, which I had as the background here and also later on. I have two fade to white transitions here where the screen flashes, and then we transition into the actual intro. I left these on. I can leave these on, it's fine. The borders aren't taken from the game. I made them in Photoshop. I didn't want to copy the game exactly, and I thought this layout looked quite nice, just having it diagonally. And the logo in the top left as well, just because it looked nice there. And the borders, actually, you can't see it here. I'll have to scroll up. Yeah, the border and the logo are up here. They're the top layers because they're over the top of everything, obviously. And they fade in and out at the start and end of the players. So the backgrounds themselves, they're just PNGs from the game, but rather than just have static images in the background, I've applied a few effects, which people probably didn't even notice watching the intro, but it does make a huge difference from just having a static image. I feel like two things I would advise against for backgrounds is having static images or just having like a green screen effect with no background. Because if you want like a lot of motion or flow to your intro, just having that in the background takes a lot away from that, even if it doesn't seem like it would. So what I actually added here is, as you can see, the scale increases, so it zooms in. It also rotates. There's a tint, so it starts out in full color and it slowly goes black and white, and then fades to the next one, which rotates the other way, and so on up to the end of the players. And then I added a bit of a noise effect as well, just to make it a bit more grainy, kind of like camera footage, I guess, would be a good way to describe it. So that goes on for all the backgrounds, taken from the first game once again. Hope that audio is not too loud. It sounds terrible when you just zoom through. And then the end backgrounds are actually like, what layer is this? Layer 5. So for Joseph, I put the control room back up. This time without the blur though, so you can see it more clearly. And then we fade to, this is an image of the school that I put an effect over. It's basically a hologram effect. I use it on the logo as well, but if using Premiere, there's not like just a default effect like I think there is in other editing software for you to add this. I looked up a tutorial to do it. There's quite a few, so it's not hard to learn. I think actually, if I go into my preset, yeah, I had this saved from the Rising Stars intro, so I used it on the lore team, and I used the same presets from that here, but obviously I changed the color and the size of the bars to match this more accurately. And if I click here once again, you can see It scales up, the position moves up as well, so the top of the score remains visible as it zooms in. And the tint goes up as well, it's not as clear with the hologram over the top. What are the hologram effects even? So yeah, the hologram is basically made up of having a grid effect moving, and then a bunch of noise over the top, and there's a few other things you can add as well if you want to make it look more realistic. But just for this, I think it looks fine, just like that. Again, with the camera footage kind of style. And before I go further, one thing I would recommend if you're using Premiere is to get into the habit of learning sequencing, and your timeline won't look just a complete mess like this. But I was too lazy to learn, so I'm stuck with this. It's not the worst thing in the world if you know, if you know how to organize it, it's fine, but sequencing just makes organizing everything so much easier. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the logo effects next of all. Once again, pretty simple. The campaign logo fades in. It has the hologram effects again, but yellow or gold to match, just to match the logo. And I also added a wave warp effect, just to make it ripple like that. And then the Danganronpa logo fades in. Not really any major effects on this. I did add a drop shadow. I do add the drop shadow preset to most, whenever I use text in intro to help it stand out. I used a white shadow on this one just to make it stand out from the darker background. Does this even transition out? I don't think it does. So that's one thing I messed up on. But it's not really noticeable. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about this little effect here and then the text and everything. So basically this is another green screen effect from the game that I figured kind of worked well with how, well, you'll see it better when the sprites come in, but it serves as a path almost for where the sprites move, and it just looked nicer than having them on just this background. It kind of sucks I can't have the full word because of the angle I have it at, it would normally go more horizontally, but this is the best I could do. It's not really a big deal. And with every player, it changes color to kind of match the sprite more. Just a little small thing I thought would be nice to add. And it only lasts a couple seconds, so I basically took the same thing and looped it for every player, and then tinted it to change the color, basically. You can see it here. If you don't have to apply green screen effect, you use an ultra key for blue and green backgrounds, and then you basically just drag this over to the color of the green screen. It matches that, and then you're done. It shows up here normally. Yeah, let's get this is what the default effect looks like. And if I want to add an ultra key, drag that on here, get the key color. I just have to click it even. And then boom, it's gone. And then you can scale it up, boom. But obviously because I rotated it, it looks a little different. But that's how that works. Onto the text. Now, again, these assets I took from the game, the bullet and the... what's even the word here? Revolver? No. Basically... what layer is this even on? I haven't touched this intro in so long. We zoomed in a bit to make it... barrel, that's the word. Okay, zoomed in a bit, make it a bit clearer, so... the barrel's just static there for most of the time, like it is in the game. When the bullet shoots, I have it scale up, and I also have it tend to go whiter. And then it goes straight back, and then it rotates to signify reloading. The rotation isn't that clean, just because I didn't have much time between the players for that transition, but it gets the job done. And then the ring rotating around it. I kind of messed this up. I should have lined these up in Photoshop first, but I didn't. So it was kind of hard to position them in the right places, and that's why there's only one ring when there's two rings in the game. This was how I made it look better. And that just continually rotates around for the entire time it's on screen. Nothing really special about that. And then for the bullet itself, again, made these in Photoshop, so I just got the bullet and then added text over the top. It's the font from the game again. And how this works is it starts out here. At the same point, it's synced up to the barrel, scales up, and then it shoots. I added a directional blur and the tint again, make it go white as it fires off the screen. It has to rotate slightly just to keep in line with this. It was kind of awkward to figure out, but we managed to get it done. And it moves off screen, and then we have a push transition where the next one transitions in as the barrel rotates. But obviously you can't see the other bullet it transitions from because it's already off the screen. So that's how I figured out how to do all that. You could just manually have it move position, but it would have looked a bit more awkward, I think. And that remains the same for every player. Similarly, the sprites are synced up in the same way. I'll just play this, I guess. So as the barrel glows up, so does... there's two sprites overlaid on each other. The background one that's lower opacity increases in size, the same as the barrel, just leaving like a pulse effect, and then goes back. And then the sprites, they fade in from the bottom with a directional blur once again. I put 2 keyframes here to make sure the movement remains stable. That's like a whole other thing that I'm not going into. Scales up, and then blur moves up again, and the next one comes in. And I'm going to let you in on a big secret here. All you have to do is copy, drag to all, and then you could just paste attributes and it will do the same for every sprite. And that's how people make intros so fast, because once you've keyframed this once, then you don't have to do it again. But if you just do that and then render it out, a lot of the time it will not look good, because if these just have the exact same frames every time, then a lot of the time it'll lose sync because they're not all on screen for the same time. It can also mess up if the sprites are different sizes. Like, that's a big thing as well. If you're working with art or sprites, sometimes even renders, it's smart to resize them, center them, make sure they're all in similar positions before you go into editing software. Because, for example, some of these sprites were all made on different canvases. It wasn't a problem. I just went to Photoshop, set them all to be roughly the same size. Some of them are still different scales in here, like Change is 120, I think Ethan's like 115. But it really helps because resizing them just in the editing software, it can make them look a lot more low res than if you do it in, say, like Photoshop or I think Paint.net or some other free one if you don't have money. And it just saves you a lot of trouble when you actually get to editing the intro. But as I said, I still... After pasting the keyframes, which saves a lot of time, I recommend doing that, but it's important after you've done that to still go through every single one, check the syncing, check if the size and the position needs to be different to the ones before it, and just make it look as clean as possible. And I did the barrel first, which served as a great reference for obviously the pulse effect on the sprites, because I had something to line them up with, as you can see. But there's so many intros where it's obvious that they've just copy-pasted keyframes and rendered it out, and a lot of the time, I don't think it's not really noticeable if you're not an intro maker, but you can, if you have experience with this, you can tell when they've done that, and it starts to lose sync and look a little worse. So it's simple. It doesn't take long just to go back and check them all. It's kind of like proofreading, basically. So that you definitely want to do that. Next thing I added over the top, I used the same ring again, just scaled down, obviously. Let me put it on, yeah. And because Joseph had a lot of returners, he wanted to show that he had returners this time. I decided to add the little season indicator thing. It's kind of similar to the opening titles of the game, but not really. I didn't put as much effort into that. Those just have like a wipe transition. What layer is this? up here, yeah, they wipe across, but obviously if it's the same season, then the transition doesn't show, but it doesn't need to because it's not changing anything. Once again, I just made these little indicators in Photoshop, which is its own other tutorial. If you want to learn how to do things like that, I can show you, I guess. Just a couple more things I can talk about. Obviously, there's the character sprites, which I'll add on low opacity just to the side here. They don't mean anything significant. I just thought they'd be a nice thing to add. Me and Joseph decided together who would be who. I had to change a few because not all the sprites kind of worked in this setting. They originally took up more of the background, but I want them to be a bit more subtle so that this background would show, like the main background. So these are just characters from the games. Some of them you'll be able to tell what they were based on for each person, but that was just a cool thing to add in reference to the game. And then the other thing is the text flying in the background, just like in the class trials. I forgot to do no name tags, but that's fine. All the other scenarios fly by, and the command as well, yeah. Just another small thing that I thought would be nice to add. And then when we get to the end of the players, I have, I think it's like barn doors it's called. It's basically like a wipe from the middle instead of the side, along with directional blur. So it's a fast transition, which is good when you have so many assets on screen that need to fade out at once. And then we have Joseph with the control room because Monokuma. And then for the credits, I probably could have done a different font here, but I didn't really know what would work best, so I just stuck with the same one. For here, I kind of cheated a bit with this because I had the directional blur preset already. I basically just cut up when they were like, I did the motion first as them moving up, and then I cut it up and added directional blur here on the beats so they would pulse like that. And I say cheating because normally you'd have to like position the keyframes manually, but if I just cut the clip and have a preset that sets it at the start, it just does it automatically. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it does. For Parker here, he has one of his many bonus sprites in the background fading in for a second. We also have the pink text, again a reference to the game because just between you and me, Parker didn't do anything. Pulse once again, just the same as on the specs, and then again for Pi as well. And then the credits have the same directional blur but from a different direction this time, just as a way for them to fade in. I don't know if they move. I think they move slightly, and then they just fade out. Oh, and then I completely forgot about the logo at the end. So how I did this, it was actually, it's not all one image, it's multiple layers. So this is a static video effect that I scaled down. First off, I cut out the monitor of the logo because I made the logo before I had the PSD file. So I cut out the monitor, and then I scaled down the static effect and basically hid it in the background. And then this is a green screen effect, find on YouTube, just Monokuma. And it was kind of difficult to keep them all in line as it faded out, but I managed it. And I thought that looked really cool. Nagito comes in for a second because it's not Danganronpa without Nagito, come on. And that just goes through in the intro, the background gets grey, darker, whatever. And it just fades out with the song. Those are the main things I could think to go over. If I think of anything else, I'll either add it on or just add like annotations. If you have any questions, just feel free to leave a comment or just send me a DM or whatever. And I hope this video was entertaining or useful or anything. And hopefully I didn't ramble on for too long. Yeah, thanks for watching.